to Mark Childs, Cabinet Member for Adult Services, and Amy and Helen. Thank you for attending. Okay, first item is apologies for absence then, Liz.
We've received apologies from Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams, Councillor Erica Kirshner and Councillor Gloria Tanner.
Okay, disclosures of personal prejudicial interests, are there any? I take your silence, no? Okay, item 3, prohibition of whipped votes and declaration of party whips. And we go on to item number 4, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Okie dokie. We'll go to page 1, page 2, page 3, and page 4. Can I have a person to propose that they're a correct record?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Jeff. Can I have a seconder, please? Can I have a seconder for the minutes, please?
Yes, I'll second that, sir.
Thank you, Hazel. Great, so we go on to, oh gosh, I lost the agenda, hang on. Are there any public questions, Liz?
No, we haven't received any.
Good. Item number 6, an update of adult services transformation. Oh no, I'm on the last one. Sorry. Performance monitoring. Who's going to take us through this?
Amy and I will tag team if that's okay, and I'll start.
Brilliant.
Okay, so what we're bringing to you is the performance monitoring, and what we've got is the monitoring from May of this year. I'm going to add into it a little bit of context around the current position, because I think that's helpful for colleagues to be aware of, really. The various areas in the paper, which we'll take as having been read, are split between my portfolio and Amy's portfolio. So we would take it in my area first in terms of the integrated health and social care part of the service. So during May, the community health and care system across the region started really to show signs of increasing pressure in some areas, and we started to see back in May, it seems like a long time ago now, but increasing levels of escalation in the hospital sites at the same time. So at the same time as we were seeing our increased pressures in the community of people presenting to us who might not have presented to us during COVID, what we started to see as well, and it's really been borne out over the last month more so, is increasing levels of escalation on the acute hospital sites. In terms of the council, we experienced a significant increase in the demand at our community front door, the common access point for health and social care. And we had an increase in inquiries in May on the April figure of 124 in number, which is about a third more inquiries during May than we'd had in April. We've noted, I suppose I should have said at the beginning of that, this is the first performance report that we've drawn out since the switch over from Paris to WCCIS. So there's been some challenges around that. In the common access point, the number of referrals through to the multidisciplinary team during April and May has dropped significantly, and we think that's linked to the switch over to WCCIS. We do need to scrutinise that further to understand why and to rectify the process for the next reporting month, but it's dropped so significantly at the time of the switch over that we think it must be linked to process and systems issues in WCCIS. The number of inquiries that have been received in CAP, which we've closed at CAP by directing people elsewhere and providing support, remains at approximately 35%, and that's despite an increase in the demand. So that's quite positive, because it indicates that the staff continue to hold those strengths-based discussions with individuals despite the pressure of increased numbers to address at the front door. Moving on then to the carers bit of my portfolio. During May and into June, there was training for social work practitioners in respect of supporting carers, and it was very well received. Some of the outputs from the training were publicised during Carers Week, which took place in June, And what we're really hoping to see as a result of that training is an increase in the uptake of carers assessments that plays through in the performance figures over coming months. We've got a long-standing issue of carers when they come to us asking for support, at that point not wanting to ask for support for themselves as well, and a lot of people will ask for a subsequent assessment in their own right. We want to improve that. We want to be able to have a different conversation with carers at the time when they present to us, often in crisis. One of the bonuses of WCCS is it affords us the opportunity to identify carers support in a more easily identifiable way for our future reflections on this. Flow through the bedded reablement unit at Bonamine House has remained at a consistently high level. We have continued to have good outcomes for individuals, which means that we've supported a high proportion of people to go home and a high proportion of people to go home with reduction in the amount of care that they need. And that's ensured that we've had maximum benefit from the 4 additional beds that we opened towards the end of March. So we're now we've got an offer of 19 beds in Bonamine House to support people to be reabled after either a hospital admission or during a crisis in the community where they need some reablement. Another benefit we can see is that we've ceased the crossover roles of the domiciliary care staff attached to Bonamine House and the residential care staff, and we've separated them out into a dedicated resource for each function. And what that allows us to do is it articulates a much more consistent bed capacity in terms of the staff that work in the home, but also the staff that provide domiciliary care to support those who go home from Bonamine House. It allows us to give improved governance for those staff, because what we've done with them is we've forged much closer links with the sister reablement service, the in-house reablement service, which is a much bigger service. We continue to work closely with those teams to further integrate the 2 services, and we've got really positive engagement from the staff on that. So that's really positive, and it allows us, of course, to bring the 2 services together to be more efficient and to have greater economies of scale there. The flow of individuals through the domiciliary reablement service has improved during the latter half of May, and we've had a concerted focus on the timely review of these individuals to support transition into long-term care providers once reablement's complete for those people who need ongoing support. What that's allowed us to do is to free up reablement capacity that has been absorbed in supporting those individuals who've been waiting to transition through, and that allows us to increase the number of admissions through the service from the rapid hospital discharge or the more recently rechristened Home First scheme, and we really think that'll be evidence in the June performance data. And we're also seeing, finally, some impact in domiciliary care from the recruitment drive that took place in February and March in both the reablement teams and the long-term in-house home care team. It's very frustrating because we're desperate for staff, and sometimes the length of the process, we lose people along the way, they never actually start with us. So we're meeting with HR to look at how we can best safely minimise those timescales that are associated with recruitment as much as we can. And I suppose just to give a flavour, really just a wider flavour of some of the health services that are working in integration as well. In the community, we've got our regional escalation tool now to demonstrate where we're at in terms of the pressures and the challenges in the community. And for the last 3 weeks, we've been reporting at a level 4, which is a high level of challenge in the community. And we're seeing pressures in quite a few of the health and social care services across the region. Care homes, we are starting to see increased challenges due to COVID in care homes, where we're having staff, mostly staff, I think, but occasionally residents who are testing positive for the COVID virus. Thankfully, we don't seem to be seeing people affected to the same acuity. People are not so unwell and people are recovering from it. But of course, when we have a positive test, we have to close the home down to admissions, albeit so far it's generally been for a short period rather than the 28-day lockdown. But this week, just to play forward in time, across the region, we've got 10 care homes that are either closed, awaiting whole home testing or awaiting the results of whole home testing. So the COVID impact on our care homes is alive again, really. Yeah, it's back with us. Our packages of care, our long-term packages of care, our brokerage system is heaving, is creaking under the pressure. Our external provider pickup is has slowed. I'm sure Amy will probably pick up on some of the mitigation around external care provision in her bit. Spoken about Bonawine House. District nursing teams and the Swansea acute clinical team continue to be very busy, very pressured. Again, we're seeing across the system a slight increase in absence due to COVID, either staff who are having to isolate or isolate because of children who are symptomatic. We are still seeing in Swansea a consistently high level of unrelenting need for end-of-life support in the community. So the district nursing team have on average got 18 to 20 people on the caseload at any time who are receiving end-of-life care where they wish to, which is at home. And I think from me, that's about it really, but I suppose the overall picture is that we've got acute hospital sites that are on a high level of escalation, but the COVID impact really is being felt far more in the community at the moment and is putting us on a high level of challenge across the piece. Amy?
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you. If you're happy, Chair, if I carry on with the areas that are in my portfolio.
Yes, and we'll take questions at the end. Is that okay with you both?
Yeah, great. Thank you. So just to pick up on some of the performance areas within the report, it's the same caveats that Helen mentioned. This is the first report using the information from the WCCIS new system. So there's some areas that we know we've got to work on in the coming months. Something I wanted to highlight was around the learning disability teams reviews. I've talked about this in previous scrutiny meetings, so this is an area of focus. We're continuing to prioritise contact with individuals through a red, amber, green sort of RAG status, and that's working well, but we also know we need to do more around the review work. This has also been picked up through our transformation work streams, so looking at a new learning disabilities and wellbeing board across the region, but obviously it will impact in terms of our Swansea work, particularly looking at a learning disabilities framework for the region, and also an operating procedure. So that again should help us with supporting all the timely implementation of what we need to. That's on page 5 and page 7 of the report. The adult mental health practitioners, the AMPS team in mental health social work team, have implemented a new referral process. So I just wanted to highlight that. It's only came into force in early July, so we'll see the impact of that, but it's a new system which will hopefully ensure timely access to those who need it in terms of the team and services. Again, performance in terms of that team is reporting in this document, and it's going well. The next area I wanted to highlight was around the external domiciliary care. So that's on page 15 of the report. As Helen mentioned, there's a lot of pressure in terms of the systems. The report here hasn't quite caught up with the stats in terms of where we are today. But what we are doing is working with the providers to try and ensure they maximise every bit of spare capacity. There isn't much. I think that's the challenge. That we're also continuing with our right sizing work, so to ensure that the right help is the right people at the right time, and also looking at bringing new providers in. So we're currently carrying out due diligence around that, just to ensure there's more availability in terms of our brokerage, assisting with the brokerage and getting packages of care out to people. On page 18 of the report is around our internal residential, and Helen's mentioned already around Bonamine, and I think the other sites, again, we've got they're progressing well in terms of delivery and performance. We've increased numbers, particularly in the last fortnight, in our internal residential sites as well, to support the pressures in the hospital as well. So that's not reflective in the report yet, but that is some action that we're undertaking. Also within residential, I don't think I mentioned this last time, apologies if I did, but this is a piece of work under our transformation programme as well. So we are looking at the longer term approach we take for our residential sites as well, particularly evidence now with the pressures on the system, and we want to make sure that we have the most suitable model in terms of supporting whether that's step up from the community, step down from the hospital, and also that long-term complex care, which has been signed off as our approach for internal residential care. The day services are a new addition to the performance report, so you'll see that on page 20. So that gives you some indication. There are definitely some reporting anomalies in the system on this. It's not bad, but we can just see that April had higher numbers than March and February, and we think it's more balanced, but we'll get that next month. We'll ensure that's reporting correctly. I think this is just in terms of catch up. There is some narrative in the report about this, but we're pleased to give you those figures, and hopefully we'll give you more as the months go on in terms of our reporting. We are all our day services bar 2 are now open. The 2 that aren't are linked with residential sites. We have to use the space for isolation to do with the residents, but we are providing the same service to the same service users, but in different sites. So, for example, we're utilising the Swansea Vale site for the Mice Glass team. So, I hope I've got that the right way around. Okay. And we are still limited by social distancing, but obviously hot off the press, it's just been announced, isn't it, that we will be changes to that potentially coming up in the next month or so. So we will be revising the services based on whatever requirements we have to meet at the time, including the infection protection and control and social distancing. And safeguarding, I just wanted to pick up the last 2 points. Safeguarding referrals we have seen quite an increase in the latest performance figures in this report, particularly compared to the last 2 months, but not too dissimilar to this time last year. So the team will be tracking and the performance information, but what we are seeing is the benefits of the initial assessment and inquiry process within safeguarding. So people can phone up and talk to the team or email the team, and they'll get some advice before they put the safeguarding referral in, just to ensure that it's the most appropriate approach. And we're seeing the positive impact on that preventative work that the team are doing. And then just in terms of the deprivation of liberty safeguards assessments, I was reporting last time we came here that we were seeing a real decrease, and we've seen months, almost a year's with the decrease in terms of our backlog, and a really steady sort of management in terms of our current caseload. Unfortunately, we have seen a bit of a spike in the last couple of months of this increasing, although that said, still a lot better than this time last year. We have got additional resources in the narrative of the report, but we've secured some grant funding to bring in additional support to help us address the backlog and get back on a sort of manageable level with the DOLS referrals that we're having. And we're also preparing for the new liberty safeguards, liberty protection safeguards that are due to come in soon. So there's training happening across the team to support with this. That's what I wanted to highlight. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Dave, do you want to say anything on this before I open up for questions?
No, Chair. I think you're probably aware I've been off for a few weeks, so I'm here being caught up at the same time as Scrutiny. So I'm listening and learning alongside you as well, Chair.
It's nice to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you for attending. Okay, are there any questions for Amy and Helen? Chris Holly.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I want to ask about the community health, mental health team. This is one, I have to say, one team I think is going to come under more and more pressure as time goes on. I've probably got a number of people now that I'm being asked to look at to help with. But one thing is, the performance, because of COVID and many other reasons why, most of the performance data that we've gone through in the scrutiny, in the performance scrutiny panel, it's so out of sync because of the COVID restrictions and what have you. When will we have a more accurate position on the mental health team? Because this is the one thing you worry about, because unlike a broken leg, you can't see someone with a broken mind, and it's very, very difficult. And I know that many of the general public are concerned about it as well. So I think it's two things really. One, when will we have quite an accurate figure on that? And number two, how can we reassure members of the public that we are actually, through both health service and social services, on the top of the problem? Thank you.
Shall I come in on that one, Chair?
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, in terms of the performance information, you're right. It's a bit, it doesn't look right, I suppose. It's just because we're playing catch up in terms of the information from our new database system. So, for example, the assessments in March were 186, and then the assessments in April were 37. So we know there's something, you know, there's some reporting lag there. But so the team are working on this. Every month it will improve. By the time we next come to scrutiny, you'll see a much better position. So we'll have another quarter's worth of information. The work, particularly around the mental health teams, is very much in partnership, you know, so both in partnership with the Health Board and also third sector organisations that we either contract with or who are just independent to us as well, or the Health Board may contract with. So it's a whole system looking at this support. It's very much driven by our plans around the Mental Health and Wellbeing Board, which is a regional approach. And we've got a number of actions and programs and projects within that structure. And again, we'd be pleased to give you some more information on this in a future meeting if you'd like, or just in terms of a written response of some of the activities. But an example of this is a single point of access. There's been a professional single point of access in terms of mental health via GPs and other professionals working in the area, but we're looking at a public single point of access being launched around September time around mental health support. I know we probably could have done with it, you know, X amount of time ago, but it's something that's been talked about for a long time, but it's been worked on at the moment, linked in with the 111 service as well. So it's something that we'd like to, to bring you more information about in the coming months.
Thank you, Amy. Chris, do you want to come back on?
Yeah, Amy, I do think that all members should be sent a copy of the single access point, but more importantly, should be given an idea of what these projects are and how you get people into them, etc. Because I'm acutely aware, you know, I can remember when the bar was moved for mental health care, especially in the Gunbulla Day Centre. We went from having 200 odd people per week down to 100, and those people that were missed, if you like, or who didn't make the cut, were virtually left on their own. And we had a number of incidences, and we're dealing with a couple of those instances now. So I think it's important that members are aware of what is available now, who they can contact, and what projects are running currently. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Amy.
Councillor Jeff Jones.
Sorry, Sue, Susan, can I come in on that just briefly?
Yes, by all means, Mark, sorry.
Sorry, Jeff. No, I just wanted to add to that because I think it's a very good point Chris makes about all members. I know they had this early on in the pandemic, but a reminder of the single point of access contact point and how to refer people to that and that sort of thing. I was a little concerned that members would not be able to refer individuals to specific projects. That would have to be through an assessment via probably the single access point. Not that there's any reason why they shouldn't be aware of the existence of those projects at all, but they can't. There isn't the ability for members to refer directly into specific projects. That needs to be done through a professional route. Hopefully that's okay with you, Chris.
I think I can perfectly understand that. Otherwise, you could have members phoning up about anybody, any Tom, Dick, or Harry, or Mary, or whatever, and you would then have a stack of them. And I can completely understand that the referral has to be done through a portal which is managed by professionals within the field. I think that's right and proper. What I'm concerned about is that if anybody misses anybody, that we have the opportunity to say to these professionals, please, can you have a look at another? But I do accept your point, Mark, and I think it's perfectly understandable that that portal exists.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. Yeah, you know, in everything I've read and what you've actually relayed today, you know, Helen and Amy, you know, the word pressure has come up a lot, you know, on the word COVID and so on. And I understand, you know, it's caused, well, havoc really in a lot of places. staff suffering from perhaps COVID and long-term COVID, problems with staff numbers, actually employing new staff and so on. The private sector actually under pressure. But I think Ellen actually said as well, there's a high pressure in the community. Is there some sort of correlation? We've actually moved in social services to people remaining in their homes and, shall we say, family members actually looking after, those individuals. Are the pressures actually solely down to COVID, or is it actually highlighted that we perhaps expect too much from people, the carers in the community, and they're actually crying out for help, because of COVID perhaps, but because of other things. We've actually mentioned about the commerce access point numbers actually shooting up. I think in a previous meeting we actually said about people declined assessments, but you've actually said now that people are actually for assessments. So have we unearthed a problem actually perhaps in the community where we perhaps expect too much of people?
I'm not sure whether what we've got, Councillor Jones, is a little bit of a legacy of of people who, in the height of the pandemic, because of the infection prevention and control, wanted to shut their doors really, and they didn't want people coming into their homes, and they felt they'd manage. We had people who weren't working, who might have been able to perhaps look after individuals who needed their support, who've gone back to work. I think what we're seeing, whilst it might not be COVID activity, all COVID disease activity directly linked, I think it's all indirectly linked, because there's a number of people who are now starting to say, we've been struggling under this pressure for 12 months and nearly 18 months, isn't it? And now we really need some help. I think carers, it's a really interesting question. I hope it's something that, as part of the training that we've had for carers, we can get underneath really, which is one of the issues around carers in particular, who, I don't know if it's because they're carers that they don't seem to be able to say, yes, I need some support. They always put the cared for individual at the front.
Yeah.
And they often find it very difficult to ask for support. And I think what we're seeing is people are coming to us in crisis now. They're not just coming to us saying, couldn't help, could you? They're coming to us really in crisis. So I think it's probably a mixture of everything you've described there. I probably haven't answered your question very well, but I think it's hard to put it down to one particular thing.
Thank you, Helen. Jeff, do you want to come?
No, I'm just going to say, well, if it's unearthed, from actually in the, perhaps COVID has perhaps highlighted the problem, I'd welcome that, you perhaps take note of that.
Can I just say something on this issue with learning disabilities and the day services? The carers for a majority of people with learning disability are elderly, and I just wondered how much support we are giving these carers, because it's been a long time. Okay, Mark, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just briefly. I'm sure one of the officers will come back on that specific question, Chair, but I think we'd freely admit that we have asked a lot of people, of carers, during this pandemic, and to be honest, and to their credit, carers have taken on a lot more than they normally would have done in normal circumstances, because of the situation of the pandemic that we were in, and I think we always acknowledge that there would be a latent demand as we came out of this of need that we needed to address. That is why it's so important that when we meet carers, that they too have an assessment of their needs, of how we can help them care more, because most of them want to care more, or care as well as they can for the person they're caring for. We should never be asking too much. We should understand the situation of the cared for and their carer well enough not to ask too much, but there should be an avenue for people who are struggling to come forward, and that is they are coming forward now, and now we've got to work out how best to address theirs and the person they care for's continuing need.
Thank you, Mark. Amy, did you want to come back on anything?
Yeah, thank you. Just in terms of the support for individuals with learning disabilities or their families or carers, in terms of the support we've had, yeah, we have been limited in the capacity in the day services due entirely to social distancing, really. So it's around a third of the people who access the service before are currently accessing it. Some families, this is absolutely fine. And this is why I mentioned in the report, it's in the report and verbally about the RAG status. So we red, amber, green, every call, these get reviewed weekly. And then with the individuals and their families, the contact or their carers, the contact can be via telephone. They can access perhaps day services 1 day a week when they may have accessed before twice, you know, so we're trying to accommodate people as much as we can, but also offering the carers assessments as mentioned, but also direct payments for individuals to purchase or get additional support in, and also our flexible support team as well. So it could be one-to-one support in the community as opposed to the sort of traditional day service. So we've tried to look and accommodate with alternative services rather than the day support.
Thank you, Amy. Jeff, I assume your hand is a one from before?
Well told, well told off, Sue.
Tony, you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm trying to understand, and I think I've got it from the past discussion, but I just want to double check. In Amy's report, in the 4th paragraph, she makes a reference to a significant increase in safeguarding referrals and also more deprivation of liberty referrals. I was going to ask, is there a common theme behind those two and what's driving it? But I think what you've said is that it's a sort of a legacy effect of COVID and the way it's playing out, in particular with carers and others. Would that be a correct interpretation?
Yes and no. No link between the two that we know of. You know, we're not seeing as a direct link between the safeguarding and dolls particularly, but we will look at, you know, we will keep looking at the data to see. I just think it's just happened in that respect, I believe, because we don't always see the same correlation between the two. The increase is, I'm not sure that it is COVID. It may be, but we're not sure really. I think it's on par to last year, but quite an increase compared to last month. And the same's happened again this month. You know, we know June, the month we just had, June and July, it's increased again as well. So it's something that we're just keeping a watching brief on. I think it's perhaps more to do with those wider pressures in terms of the safeguarding referrals, certainly. So that's a yes.
Thank you.
Want to come back, Tony?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Great. Any more questions now then before we go on to the next item? No, this item number 7 now, initial feedback from the Care Inspectorate Wales. I don't know who is taking this.
Can I just say an intro before the officers take over and talk some sense?
Yes.
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, we haven't had a formal feedback from the inspection or mini inspection, whatever you want to call it, that we had. So we can't give you, although we've had a verbal feedback, and I'm sure the officers will explain what they understand by the verbal feedback, until we get the formal report, we're speculating about what they might come back with, and I think I've advised officers, not that they needed it, that really we shouldn't be speculating. We can say how the inspection went. Well, I think it went well. I think we presented ourselves well. I think the comments back that we had during the inspection were reasonable. But we're not in a position to give you a full feedback on the inspection based simply on the initial verbal response. I hope that's okay with the committee. However, I'll put one proviso in that, is that we have just had a response from the domiciliary care mini inspection we had earlier this year. I think Helen was at a meeting today where it came back, so she might be able to give you more information on that inspection rather than the most recent one.
Thank you, Mark. Right, Amy?
Shall I?
Helen?
Yeah, shall I come in first then? So just some of the, is that all right? Just some in terms of some of the verbal feedback we had with the caveats that Mark's mentioned already. So it was a short assurance visit, so it was quite limited in terms of the amount of people they spoke to, but they did feel they had a good cross section of service users, carers, staff, and partner agencies, and they were very grateful and kind about the support they'd had in terms of the team in preparation for and during the visit. As a team, I think there was a sense that we, and this is our sense, but we presented a strong collaborative, strength-based approach to the way that we work with each other and with the families and individuals and partner agencies as well. They focused on 4 areas in terms of the assurance visit and also the feedback we got given. So around people, voice and control, prevention, partnerships and well-being. So just a couple of highlights from each. So in terms of people, they did acknowledge that we'd been working agilely and how we'd adapted to that. They acknowledged around the RAG status and how we'd had a clear oversight and rationale in terms of what we were doing. That care plans, reviews and support was provided and evidenced. There was a mention particularly around the dedicated safeguarding team, and that we had a reference to that, and also development of a review team as well, which is one of the actions that we've put in place in the last 12 months. And I'm really pleased to say verbally they told this, so we're pretty sure this should be in the written response, but the staff are committed, loyal and positive. So we obviously want to really stress that. In terms of the prevention feedback, they acknowledge the complexity is increasing at our front doors. So coming into the service, they thought that the discharge to assess approach that we're taking is reducing the use of hospital beds, and that's timely. So this is our home first model that Helen mentioned. With partnerships, the feedback, they just verbal again, this is, but the partners welcomed closer working and the flexibility in that we'd allowed them to test ideas. So we agree with that. So and that partnerships are strengthened and the co-production approaches were welcomed. The again, with the partnerships, the safeguarding was in line with our requirements, and they felt that there was evidence of analysis of risk and action plans in place. And with well-being, the final one around well-being, the well-being strategy, they said was clearly making a difference. This is around our staff well-being strategy. That we'd applied different ways of keeping in touch with people and different communication approaches. And again, really pleased again verbally, but to say that they said their staff are dedicated and focused and have people's interests at heart, which is what we aim for. As mentioned, it was quite limited. We feel, and this is just sort of feedback from us, that the feedback reflected the good work that we're doing and the teams are doing, and that the areas we know we need to focus on and are under development in our transformation plans and actively taking forward were the ones that the inspectors recognised as well. So.
Thank you, Amy. Do you want to add anything?
Yes. I've just come off a call now at 2 o'clock with the CIW just to give formal feedback on the domiciliary care, so the specific domiciliary care inspection that they carried out the week of the 24th of May. And the final report was published yesterday, so it is a published report now. So just the feedback that we had from the inspector this afternoon, he did tell us the Swansea Domiciliary Care Service is the biggest DOM service inspection that they perform, and it's the most complicated because we've got quite diverse services within our domiciliary care category. So the inspection covers our internal long-term domiciliary care service, our internal reablement dom care service, Llanfair House, which is a short-term residential supported accommodation for those with mental ill health, and the Flexible Home Support Service, which is the short-term crisis intervention for children and their families at a time of need. And what they said was this makes the inspection quite complex, really, particularly around issues like training, where we would expect, for example, manual handling training to be a key thing that we really need in the internal domiciliary care service, perhaps less important in Llanfair House dealing with people with mental ill health. But taking a broad brush approach, it was kind of not always comparing apples with apples, and the inspector's reflection on that was that they're going to seek to split the areas out for their next inspection to try and give more meaningful feedback to us. And I think that was really useful. It was really useful because to try and organise in time for the inspection for services that are so difficult was a big feat. In terms of the headlines, I'll start with the areas for improvement, really. So there were no areas where priority action was required. They didn't feel there was any immediate or significant risk for people using the service. They identified 3 areas where they felt we needed some action to improve, and those will be followed up in the next inspection. I suppose in much the same way as the adult services feedback, it's important to note that none of these issues were unexpected, and none of them were matters that we were unaware of prior to the inspection. So the first area they mentioned was training records. They didn't find it easy to access the totality of training records. So when they wanted to know whether an individual had completed certain training, when they were due to complete their next training, they couldn't easily access it. The information was all available, but they impressed on us, really, there were no specific concerns. It wasn't available in one repository of information, really. What they did tell us was that wasn't specific to Swansea, and they're seeing it across Wales because we've got, for example, staff training database, we've got the service training records, we've got the portal for e-learning. So various bits of the information around an individual's compliance with their training is held in various different places. We were able to tell them that the new web roster platform that we are due to go live on the 22nd of August will provide us with an overview of individual staff training, because what it allows us to do is to allocate staff to packages of care where their training and their competence is right for that package of care. So it's an integral part of the new system that we're going to be launching on the 22nd of April. The second area where they issued what they call an open technical notice, which means we're not quite compliant, but the improvement activity is evident, and they're allowing us the opportunity to achieve the compliance by the next inspection. The second area was around the involvement of individuals and carers in their reviews of their care packages and their support packages. They felt in the documentation it wasn't well evidenced. However, anecdotally in their conversations with individuals and staff, it was clear that it is happening. So the reflection really was that the recording needs to much better reflect practice. And then thirdly, they issued us an open technical notice, so acknowledging our improvements, but saying we need to do a bit better, which was to do with documenting evidence of outcomes for individuals. So it wasn't always present in the records, although once again, it was strongly present in the conversations with staff. Staff talk about their work and their interventions clearly through the lens of outcomes for individuals using our services. It was again about how we document and evidence and record that where we were needing to make improvements. We do feel that the implementation of WCCIS will support improvement in recording. And we're also involved this year now in the Welsh Audit of Intermediate Care, and that does support a joined up and a consistent approach to outcomes, which is going to be only helpful to us in achieving that. But in terms of the positives, the inspector gave us the following bits of feedback, positive feedback. He said they'd had excellent positive feedback from the staff in respect of the support and the visible management and their training that they received in their roles. He was keen to point out to us that that isn't always the case, that often they find that an inspection is an opportunity for staff to air discontent, really, rather than necessarily being very positive. He said the feedback from individuals using our services was excellent without exception. They felt our quality assurance processes within the domiciliary care settings were very strong, and that our support plans for individuals were good, with a caveat around the recording of outcomes. Daily logs were very consistent and of a good quality. They felt that our infection prevention and control procedures were excellent, and the information available to staff was accessible, which was particularly important as they were inspecting us through the sort of the last year, the last COVID year. They felt we had a highly enthusiastic staff team, and there were a couple of individual mentions, really. Fiona Broxton, who's the Strategic Operations Manager, was commended by her staff, by the users of the service and by the inspectors. I don't know if any of you know Fiona. She's a phenomenally organised person, and I think having said that the inspection was very complex, they commended on her organisational approach to providing them with the information to allow them to carry out the inspection as easily as they could. And the other thing that they mentioned was the responsible individual, Dave, role. They felt it was very strong in Swansea. They felt that the involvement and the understanding of the services was very strong. And one thing that they commented on over the last year was they felt that the feedback in the directors' briefings over the last year to the staff was considered to be a huge motivator, those thank yous to help keep staff going. And they mentioned that particularly in their feedback. So I think really to have continued to keep individuals safe and to provide a service and to come out with an inspection report like that over the last year is just, it's phenomenal. So really positive anyway.
Thank you, Helen. Dave, I know you want to say something, but can I just say our grateful thanks to all members of staff and please from this panel. I'm sure everybody would want you to take that back to the staff.
Thank you, Chair. I will.
Dave.
Yeah, I think Helen started to touch on it at the end, and you've reinforced it. You know, the single measure really of a positive inspection or, you know, not so positive inspection is the feedback that the inspectors get from staff, from managers, from, you know, their heads of service, you know, etc. You know, we had 3 inspections now, effectively, you know, the dom care inspection, the overall assurance review, and an inspection of residential care services for children, young people, all at the same time, just after we'd implemented WCCIS, you know, 12, 15 months, you know, of a global health pandemic. You know, you would reasonably have expected, you know, gosh, people are exhausted, they're fed up, and then we've got to do all this work with preparation for inspections, and then make sure we don't misrepresent either way, either misrepresent and pretend that things are better than actually we're managing to deliver at the moment, or misrepresent that, you know, things are terrible because, you know, we feel exhausted and we feel dispirited. I am hugely appreciative of the work of our staff, of the work of Amy, Helen, their senior management teams. The fact that we are getting this feedback, and there will be, you know, we've got some accurate challenges, you know, definite stuff that Helen's picked up on feedback, but they're tiny compared with the huge amount of positives. Cabinet members rightly said, look, we, you know, until we get the full report from the assurance review, we're not able to say absolutely with confidence, you know, do we know absolutely everything the inspectors have picked up, both positives and things for us to work on. It's right to stress that caveat, but on the basis of the verbal feedback, I'm absolutely convinced there won't be any surprises in that. And the thing that we should be most proud of is that our workforce have properly represented all of their hard work, and the leadership that Amy, Helen and their senior management teams have demonstrated during this most difficult of times has been outstanding. And the inspection feedbacks reflect that. And from my perspective, those are the crucial bits that enable us then to have a chance of being the best that we can be in these most difficult of circumstances. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and put on record, same as you, Sue, my huge thanks and appreciation of the staff, of Amy, of Helen, of their senior management teams. Truly outstanding. And we're a very lucky council to have all of those people working for and with us.
Thank you, Dave. Tony, you have a question?
Well, thank you, Chair. It's more a comment, really. I mean, in my different capacities, I get to be involved with a number of care organisations and hear things about even more that I'm not fully involved in. And it's quite clear to me that the City Council and probably the local health service are at the top of the league when it comes to some of the things we're talking about. Thought went through my mind as to whether particularly Mark and the councillors have given any thought to what you might call tangible recognition of the dedication of the staff, something that would mean something to the staff. It may be an event, a celebratory event. It may be, there's a range of possibilities. But I think it would be, I would encourage the leader and the cabinet member, if you've not done so already, to think about how proper and heartfelt thank yous could be given, not just to the senior team, but to the whole team in some meaningful way.
Yeah. Mark, you want to respond?
Yes. We do hope to be able to respond or demonstrate the city's thanks to our social care workers and key workers across the city, to be honest, in some way. I was hoping that I would be some part of that up until May, but because it's gone on so long, I won't be, or maybe I'll have a little sideshow part of it. But I certainly think that we certainly do want to do exactly what you say, Tony. Say thank you to our workers in the council and others across the city, health and beyond, who have given their all, worked above and beyond during the last year. Events, I have no idea what the events exactly are going, how they're going to be. There are so many people to thank and to praise. But I am very confident that this council will do what it can to say thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, ladies, for the presentation and for you, Dave. Thank you. Okay, we go on to item, oh gosh, let me get the agenda back up. Oh, good grief, this is chronic. Panel review for year 2020 to 21, draft work programme, item number 8.
Chair, do you mind if I drop out now?
Thank you very much for your attendance, not at all. Thank you, and Amy and Helen, if you, yes, and you too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, bye.
Bye. Okay. Right. Item number 8 is review for the year, the draft work programme. You've all had a little look at the draft work and there are questions there. Shall we go through the questions and maybe we can have some comments from you? Can I refresh you on the questions if I can find it? Sorry, I'm slow. It'll come to it now in a minute. Okay, what went well last year? Any comments from any of you?
Well, in-depth.
You all think it went really well then, obviously.
In-depth scrutiny, identified a number of good topics and scrutiny went well.
Chair, I found it went quite well. Sorry. You can probably hear me better now. Okay. I found that the presentations and that were quite good, and that considering what was happening, the pandemic and everything, that the staff was very much on top of what was happening and came back with reports, actions, and found time to keep us informed of what was happening.
Thank you. So, any other comments? I know we had a number of joint meetings with the children's services. Do you think that was useful?
Yes.
Useful in the short term, but I wouldn't want it to carry on.
As a permanent thing?
Yeah, it's too much.
That's fine. What do you think didn't go very well?
I don't think anything didn't go very well, because I think for me, allowing, as I said, for the whole pandemic and everything that was happening, I don't think you could have asked any more of the staff than.
I think the staff have been amazing.
Yes, so I don't think we can say. I don't know about anyone else, but for me, I wouldn't say anything didn't go well.
No other comments? Tony, did you want to say anything?
Well, not so much on the processes that have gone. I mean, I think my sense is that we highlighted the main issues and the both in performance terms and in improvement terms. But I assume we're going to have a quick word about the work programme, which is the other part of this agenda item. So I was more wanting to just ask a couple of questions on that, Chair, but not to spoil the further debate on what went well and what went not so well.
Has the work for the panel focused on the right things this last year? I don't think we've had a choice. We've had to focus on COVID, haven't we?
Mm.
And I do think that, perhaps it's my personal, that was very important, that we actually did things to allow the staff to get on with their jobs as well, yes?
Yeah.
And the joint meetings, I think, you know, helped with that because of the same topics that we were looking at. Okay, and what have we learned that will help us in the future? So maybe that would be a time when you can look at the work programme for the future then, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Chris, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of issues that we've learned for the future, and not necessarily in one of them in the positive, perhaps one of them in the negative. In the positive, I think we've learned that that performance monitoring is very selective in many cases, and even the statistician would have a problem working out many of that performance monitoring, because I personally don't think that, you know, and I chair a scrutiny board that specialises in performance, and I think the way performance is actually presented in front of a scrutiny board is it's a bit complicated, and on top of that, it's not timely. And I think that's the issues. We're always at least a quarter behind, and you know, and I think to that extent that those are the issues that I think we need to seriously think about. And because of COVID, the performance indicators and the performance data has been skewed so much that it's next to worthless, if I'm perfectly honest with you. You know, because social services has been so involved with COVID and the care and the shielding of people, that I think it is taken a backward step, and rightly so, because to treat the COVID pandemic and the way the staff has treated has acted has been superb. So I'm not criticising staff in any way. What I'm saying is the performance data is actually not really going to be that accurate and not going to be that relevant then. I think the one other thing I will say, and this again may sound a bit negative or maybe positive, I don't know which way you look at it, but when I listened to the feedback, the initial feedback from the inspectorate on both dom care and on the what Amy said, I think we come to the same conclusion there, that, you know, the staff have worked extremely well, and the inspectorate has had to find something, or the training records weren't particularly good. Well, you could say that. I think in every, and I see Tommy, I see Tony nodding his head, but every organisation I've ever been involved in, everybody complains about the training records, because the last thing you do is look at the training records, because you've got so much other work to do. So I'm not, again, it sounds negative, but I think in the grand scheme of things, I think what we've done well is we've supported the services in our adult and children's services, and what we haven't, or what hasn't happened, is the performance data isn't relevant, in my opinion, to what the current situation is.
Thank you, Chris. Tony, do you want to add anything?
Well, if you're happy to move on to how that relates to the upcoming work programme, I'd like to say a couple of things there. And I'm sorry to bang on about this, but you probably know what I'm going to say, which is that I think part of the understanding of the complexities is to have a clear understanding of what it is we're seeking to deliver in service terms or in descriptor terms. And I noticed that the meeting on the 20th of October is down to continue the discussion about the service descriptors that we talked about over a year ago in terms of the different bits that go to make up adult social care in all its forms, preventive and intervening and safeguarding and so on. And then there's a sort of undated meeting, the additional meeting on budgets, date to be confirmed, which is set after the January meeting, where we're to look at draft budget proposals for adult services. Now, given that we've had a previous discussion about some of the budgeting being geared to outcomes rather than outputs, or the gap between targets and achievement, I think we'd be needing to do a fair bit of work in order to get to the level of data that I think Chris is wanting, in order to have that additional insight into activity. And I don't know what Dave's got in mind in terms of the descriptors, whether there's been some internal thinking about that, and whether that's been shared with councillors and others. But to me, you've got to get the descriptors right before you can have any idea about what the outcomes are that you want. Because it's one thing to describe processes in budgetary terms, but I think most people who've ever had a go at this would say that trying to predict outcomes and then to quantify them in monetary terms is a very, very difficult task. So, you know, I'm still unclear as to what proportion of the services of adult social care are expected to be being measured in outcome terms rather than in output terms or in process terms. And I just think it's something that we need to have some clarity on, really.
I suppose it's quite a difficult task in that outcomes for every individual is very different.
Well, of course, you could be talking about collective outcomes, you know, the health of a group of people in this part of Swansea as opposed to that in a particular community, or whether we're seeking to have a different outcome in, for example, the way we deal with safeguarding or the way in which we deal with increasing independent living. If an outcome is that we want to see the percentage of people who are living independent lives that wouldn't otherwise have lived independent lives, then that's a perfectly legitimate outcome. But quite how you cost it, you know, is another matter. And I just have a nervousness that this is territory where it's very easy to lose sight of either the data that's discussing what it is we're doing, or the budgets that are telling you what we spent and what on. But maybe it's a discussion for another time. But in terms of the work programme for next year, I think the October meeting with the service descriptors is good. I'd be happy if it was slightly earlier in the programme, unless there's a good reason why it can't be done so quickly. But the link between that and then what the draft budget's going to look like in what are probably going to be very difficult times, given the UK scene, in terms of the money coming down to the Welsh Government, the money that's being lost because of the way the UK government are handling the EU money and so on, and the level of interference that's happening in spending from the UK government. All of that's going to impact on the ability of the Welsh Government to invest and to change.
Okay, Liz, you come in.
Yeah. Sorry, if you don't mind, I just wanted to sort of mention at the last meeting we did discuss this at the last meeting under the work programme, and we did what we agreed was that Mark Child and Dave Howes would have a chat and decide what they were able to provide this year with regard to outcomes, outputs and everything that was requested by Tony at the last meeting. We put that in the letter to them from the last meeting, and that response is due back to that letter is due back today.
Right.
But of course, Dave Howes has been off for 3 weeks. Yes. So, I mean, I will chase the letter, but what I'm presuming is it's probably going to be slightly delayed, but hopefully there will be some feedback on what was requested at the last meeting, and that, you know, will tell us what they're saying they can provide or not in the draft work programme for this year, hopefully.
Okay.
Right.
Jeff, you've got a question.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, you know, that'll be very interesting to see what they actually come back with, you know, with regards to budget and so on. You know, do we need to micro investigate, you know, with the budget, you know, he can break down, you know, we know what they actually want at the end of the day. But how much of a breakdown do we actually need with regards to how they're going to actually achieve that? So that'll be interesting, really, to come from Dave Howes and Mark Child. I don't think we need to know that much detail, you know, with regards to individuals, as you said, Sue. You know, it's really a collective part of social services would accommodate me anyway at the end of the day.
It's like umbrella outcomes. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else got any comments? Hazel, Yvonne?
I have no further comment, thanks, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you, Yvonne.
Me neither.
Great. Thank you, Hazel. Okay.
And it would be interesting to see what the Welsh Government comes up with. We'd always believe in the national government, and I don't support them in any way, but it'll be interesting to see what the Welsh Government come up with. It's not an election year, shall we say, so.
Well, I'm sure that. Are you happy with all those comments to go forward now for next year's? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll close the meeting and thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Good night,
Thanks
all.
very much, Sue. Thanks.
Bye
Bye,
now.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.